Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Fantastic Four issue number 250, cover dated January 1983. Now this is billed as a special 250th issue. There's 37 pages of story and art inside, so it's practically double-sized, and there's a pretty cool pin-up as well by Byrne of the Fantastic Four at the end of the comic. Now the cover itself is an eye-catching one, featuring the Fantastic Four there, surrounded by attacking, or apparently attacking, superheroes, including the X-Men, or four of them anyway, Spider-Man and Captain America, as well as Gladiator up here. And the cover caption is X Factor. It's intriguing because some of these characters Byrne had formerly been the artist and co-plotter on, including, of course, the Uncanny X-Men with Chris Claremont, and then he quit the book because of creative differences. And Captain America, a run on Captain America, 9-issue run on Captain America with Roger Stern, and it was Roger Stern who quit the book, and Byrne in solidarity quit as well. So there's a kind of a number of different meanings in this X Factor cover caption, at least for me anyway. So one other thing to note before opening this is the corner box. I've mentioned on previous videos that Byrne is coming up with new drawings for the corner box with every single issue, and they sometimes highlight one member of the Fantastic Four or their power, and in this one the highlight is on Reed Richards and his elasticity and stretching ability there, and I like this one. I think it's well done. So the cover itself, pencils by John Byrne but inked by Terry Austin, and of course that would evoke further memories for readers of their collaboration on X-Men. Let's open this one up to the splash page. That's a pretty cool splash page, all told, featuring Spider-Man. But I do have a slight criticism of the background. So it's a 3-point perspective of the skyscrapers and high-rise buildings of Midtown Manhattan. But it seems to me like there could have been another half hour or so spent on the inks just to make it a little bit more realistic. It looks gridded out, but some of the details, like is this supposed to be a water tower here, it just a little bit more work would have helped sell that background a bit better. So there's the title of the story, X Factor 2, and Spider-Man is taken aback by something he's seeing. What the heck is that, he thinks to himself. Let's turn the page and see what it is that has caught his attention. Well, it is this blue stretchy tubing, and he's wondering what on earth it could be. And so he decides to track it, but he notes that his spider sense isn't going off, so it's not dangerous. He touches the object and it's warm, as if it's alive, he thinks to himself. Better reel it in, see what's on the other end, and there's a hand, and so then he gets it. Holy cow, he exclaims to himself, I know what it is now, and it means that the Fantastic Four are in big trouble. So you can see here what I was saying in respect of the splash page. There's a little bit more work going into the buildings here in the backgrounds, and I think it makes them that little bit more realistic rather than on the splash page. Same goes for this particular panel here. The water tower there looks very well realized, as well as the fans on the top of the building there. It just works a little bit better for me than the geometric abstractions of the splash page, but you'll have your own opinions on that. So it is, of course, Reed Richards who's at the end of those elongated arms, and Spider-Man asks him, Professor Richards, are you okay? So then we get the story. Yes, I remember I was attacked, says Reed. All of the Fantastic Four were attacked by an incredible being. So that's what we saw in the previous issue here. We have the device of Marvel Comics in the 70s and 80s, where the corner of the panels are curved to indicate that we're looking at flashbacks here. This was a really great and memorable drawing in the previous issue. Gladiator lifting up the corner of the Baxter building. And here we have him saying to the Fantastic Four, "I'm Gladiator, Praetor of the Imperial Guard of the Shi'ar Empire. I've come to destroy you Skrulls." So Gladiator is laboring under a misconception, a misunderstanding, a classic of Marvel Comics, of course, that the Fantastic Four are his enemies and that they're Skrulls impersonating the Fantastic Four. He's wrong, but we'll find out where the Skrulls really are later on in this issue. So what happens here is that Reed says, "I don't know the origin of Gladiator's misconception, but the shape-changing Skrulls have impersonated the Fantastic Four before. Clearly, he believes they're doing so again." So Spider-Man says, "I'd say he needs disillusioning. Just point me at him, Reed. We'll find out how he stands up against the proportionate strength of a spider," because of course that is what Spider-Man has, and that's part of the weird and uncanny gift he received when he was bitten by that radioactive spider, all the way back in Amazing Fantasy number 15. And here is John Byrne's tribute to the cover of Amazing Fantasy number 15, which of course was drawn by Jack Kirby, and it's pretty cool. And I really like the decision to leave the background open for Glynis Oliver to colour in there. Which reminds me, where I didn't read out all the credits. Oh, we haven't got to them yet. They should be coming up shortly. Anyway, let's continue with this little preview. So Spider-Man is taking Reed to the Baxter building, and as he swings across the city, down below him, Gladiator's facing off against the X-Men, because they made their appearance at the end of the previous issue. So what happens here is there is a confusion again on Gladiator's part. "X-Men," he exclaims, "do not involve yourselves in this conflict. I've defeated the masquerading Skrulls and do not wish to harm any of you." So Cyclops responds, "Your battle here is not yet even begun, warrior of the Shi'ar. You will not be victor until you've vanquished us." And Nightcrawler adds, "And that is something you will never do." So does that sound like the X-Men that we know and love? And then Cyclops says, "Strike now, my comrades," and Storm says, "Destroy him." Now that doesn't sound like Ororo Munroe at all, who has a sacred vow to preserve all life. So something's awry here, something's amiss. What could it be? Gladiator, he is confused. What madness is this, he thinks to himself. The X-Men and I stood together as allies. Most recently in issues 156 to 57 of the main title by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. And Gladiator asks himself, do they now side with Skrulls? Meanwhile, not far away, Johnny is picking himself up off this awning over Bendix Books, collectibles, new and used. I wonder, was that a shop in Manhattan that sold back issues of comics? Anybody have information on that? Let me know in the comments section. So Johnny's wondering, where's the Thing? So he looks over at the bus. Holy cats, I remember now. So there we've got the curved corners of the panels, again indicating that we're looking at flashbacks from the previous issue. It was a pretty cool scene when Gladiator lifted up the bus and smashed it over the Thing. And now Johnny's thinking, ordinarily I wouldn't worry. He's awful tough, but he'd already taken a terrific beating. Hang on, big buddy, he says, I'll soon have you out. So he flames on, but remember, this bus has a gas tank. He's got to be careful there. And Byrne doesn't forget that as he has Johnny think to himself, got to control my flame exactly. The air is full of gas fumes and there's gasoline and oil all over the street. So he's careful there and he locates Ben Grimm, aka the Thing, and he's out cold. And then this is more interesting stuff from Byrne, thinking about the Thing's uncanny physiology and anatomy. Blast, thinks Johnny. His rocky hide's so thick, I can't tell if his heart's still beating. What can I do, he thinks. Mouth to mouth resuscitation won't work. It's impossible with the structure of Ben's mouth. So look at it there. And besides, he might have broken ribs. But I've got to do something. Wait, he thinks. He's probably in shock. Got to generate heat without flame. Keep him warm. So he comes up with something he can do for poor Ben. And then a few blocks away, in the celestial scanning lab of the Baxter building, Sue's out cold, but she's waking up. Franklin's waking her up, and arrives then Spider-Man with Reed Richards. So there's a reunion here of wife and husband, and then this weird little scene, and this is a very typical one of Byrne. And any of you who might have had interactions with Byrne, in particular on his websites over the years, will know that he's a stickler for how to refer to the superheroes, that one should refer to them with respect. So when Franklin here calls out in delight Spidey-Man, Spider-Man kneels down to get eye to eye with the 4-year-old, and he says to him, that's Spider-Man, Franklin. And he also thinks to himself, Spidey-Man, I should have known that would happen when I let the electric company call me Spidey. So Peter Parker giving a young 4-year-old a lesson on how he is to be addressed. So if you think that's in keeping with Peter Parker's character and personality, that's fine. I don't think it is. I think it's coming out of Byrne. But anyway, so here we have Sue wondering, Reed is putting together a theory, and it's going to be further informed by what Sue says about how she encased Gladiator in one of my invisible force fields, but he fought back against it. Some kind of feedback knocked me out. So Reed is intrigued. Feedback, he asks. Susan, do you remember the nature of it? How it felt? It could be important. And she says, I thought at the time that it was more than physical force, a psychic pressure. So now Reed has got an idea, an inspiration. That's it, he exclaims. It all fits. It explains everything. Come on, Sue, we've work to do. So this is Byrne going to give us an explanation of Gladiator's powers and how they work and how he's able to do some of the impossible things he does. And in the background of that are Byrne's pet theories on Superman over at DC Comics and how Superman's powers work. But he's kind of like exploring it here with the Superman analog in the Marvel Universe, that is Gladiator. But back into the story, Spider-Man notes that Reed and Sue have left, and he thinks to himself, hope they aren't expecting me to babysit. So he webs up the hole in the side of the Baxter building, and then he sets off in order to find Gladiator and see what he's made of. So off goes Spider-Man, breaking the little panel border there as well. And as Spider-Man swings towards the fray, what about another character from the cover? A few blocks distant in a quiet restaurant, Byrne Rosenthal is buying a late lunch for the ever-elusive Steve Rogers. So Steve Rogers is, of course, the civilian identity, secret identity of Captain America. And this is all in reference to what's going on in the main comic. And this is why Jim Salicrup is credited as plot editor for this issue, because he is ensuring that there's no discrepancies in continuity across the comics, that these characters, Spider-Man and Captain America, are guest starring in the Fantastic Four's book, but that there's no discrepancy with what's going on in their books, and the fact that Steve has this relationship with this woman. But it's all interrupted by a chunk of debris from the battle between Gladiator and the X-Men. So Steve races off. I'm fine, Byrne, get yourself undercover somewhere. She asks him where he's going. To check this out, that's my job. So he's gone again, just like that. That man is absolutely astounding, she thinks. Something tells me I'm going to need a lot of time to adjust to this new relationship. But Steve takes off his shirt, hated to duck out on Byrne like that, he thinks. But whatever it is that's causing that commotion, maybe more than the civilian authorities can handle alone. So he changes into his Captain America uniform up on a rooftop, and that's where I come in. So the transformation is complete. Steve Rogers is gone. In his place, a star-spangled living legend bounds towards the fight. He's Captain America. So obviously, Byrne, having quit both the X-Men and Captain America, had a hankering to draw them again, and so they're worked into this 250th anniversary issue. I like the detail here on the interior of the cafe where Steve and Byrne are meeting, and now back into the action. So Captain America arrives, seeing Gladiator facing off against the X-Men. He doesn't recognize Gladiator, and Gladiator's picking up, or rather Colossus is picking up this huge chunk of the street, of the road, and Gladiator yells at him, "Stop this futile aggression, X-Men. I'm more powerful than all of you combined. Colossus, I've defeated you before." So a reference there to the fight between the X-Men and the Imperial Guard on the in the blue area of the moon in issue 137, the seminal, the infamous issue 137 of Uncanny X-Men. So Gladiator is easily able to deal with that huge chunk of the street, and Colossus calls out, "Storm, to my aid at once." So great work there on the debris caused by Gladiator's powerful punch. Interesting layout here too, where we've got the panel divided in, the page divided into a 4-panel grid. That was a staple of Kirby's run on the title when there was major action occurring. And so now we get Gladiator up against Storm. He says, "Save your energy, Weather Witch. Your control of the elements cannot harm me." And she replies, "Perhaps not, warrior, but I have power you cannot guess. Not only can I control the winds of the air, but I can also shape the solar winds, and from them select radiations of specific wavelengths." So then, with this Kirby crackle emerging from her hands, Gladiator's hurt, pain such as Gladiator has never known, explodes through his unearthly body. His cry is terrifying, animalistic, the sound of a creature suddenly stripped of all pretense of humanity. His reaction is instinctive. So he dives underground, and Storm tells Nightcrawler to go after him. "Stop him yourself," he responds. "My powers are the least of us all. What can I do?" So that's interesting. Turn the page. Now we get a 3-panel layout for this particular page. Gladiator emerging from the ground underneath Nightcrawler. "You could die, freak," he says. So that's a really cool panel. And then Nightcrawler is rescued by Spider-Man. That's nicely done. He says, what does he say here? He says, "Hey, I don't know what you just said, pal, but it didn't sound at all polite. If I were Nightcrawler, I'd be just downright miffed and probably leave this party altogether." But then Nightcrawler attacks Spider-Man, and he says, "It will please me to end your nonsense once and for all." So Spider-Man is taken aback. His spider sense is going there. "Don't know what's gotten into you, Blue," he says, "but if some body's controlling your mind, I'm afraid your body's going to take the knocks." But Nightcrawler grabs Spider-Man's ankle with his prehensile tail, and also he starts punching Spider-Man, taking Spider-Man by surprise because he doesn't remember Nightcrawler being so strong. So there's things that are amiss here, puzzles. And then Nightcrawler punches Spider-Man into the garbage here. And then he's about to rip out his throat. And now, since I'm encumbered with these ridiculous fangs, as he gets ready to rip out Spider-Man's throat, that's a pretty cool panel there. Nightcrawler looks menacing indeed. But he's interrupted, Spider-Man saved by Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. And he says here, "Sorry, X-Man, but if you've suddenly developed vampiric tendencies, I may have to get decidedly nasty." So there's there's an allusion here to one of the most fondly remembered of Byrne and Stern's short run on Captain America, issue 254, when Captain America killed Baron Blood, the World War II vampire, and did it by beheading him with the edge of his shield. So that was pretty memorable stuff from Byrne and Stern's run. And Byrne here alluding to that, I think, in Captain America's dialogue. So Nightcrawler faces him and says, "Insolent pig, you've interfered in a warrior's rightful kill." And Captain America responds with a punch. "I don't understand what you're saying, friend, but a blind man could have seen that attack coming." And he's punched in the back of the head by Colossus. So he swings at him with the shield. "That blow would have taken off my head," he says, "if I hadn't rolled forward with it. Blast, it's the big Russian Colossus. But how do you get so close without me noticing? There's no way I could have missed his approach unless he's suddenly able to change size at will." So Captain America not faring well against Colossus. Spider-Man spots it. Captain America, how do you get into this mess? And what the heck did Colossus hit him with? That shield is supposed to absorb any impact. So that's interesting. That's Byrne reminding us via Spider-Man's thought balloon that Captain America's shield is a vibranium steel alloy with a third mysterious element that means that it absorbs impact and it can be redirected at whoever threw the punch in this case. But Captain America is up against something whereby he doesn't have his usual advantage. Meanwhile, something's up with Cyclops too, and Gladiator spots it. Cyclops, your power has changed since last we met, but no matter. Lay waste the whole city, I shall still conquer you all. So Cyclops' optic blast, it seems like it's explosive rather than concussive force. That's what seems to be communicated in the artwork there. Then what about Johnny and the Thing? This is a great page here. Again, 3 panels so as to show us or give us space for this really cool scene where the Thing, in order to prove that he's okay, when Johnny says to him, "Are you sure you're up to it, Ben?" He says, "Sorry, hotshot, I wasn't listening. Did you say something?" And Johnny's impressed. "Not a thing, Ben, not a thing," as the Thing punches the bus away from them. All right then, we got to have it every single issue. We got to have the catchphrases. It's clobbering time, and the Human Torch adds his own catchphrase, "Flame on." And we get this weird little interlude here. It's almost just like, don't forget that the Thing has a girlfriend, Alicia Masters, that she's a blind sculptress, and she hears on the radio about the fight. But I like the work that Byrne here has done on her sculptor's studio. I think it's pretty cool. You can see some of the sculptures she's made, including one of the Silver Surfer, which of course alludes to the fact that the Silver Surfer's first friend on Earth was Alicia Masters, and because she didn't judge him on his weird appearance because of her blindness and also her good-heartedness. So she's worried about the Thing there. And then that's it. We don't see her for the rest of the issue because we're back into the action. But first of all, Reed is using, or he's working on some equipment here. He says he doesn't have time to explain everything. And Sue says, "You said it should have been impossible that Gladiator could pick up the building the way he did, that the building's own weight should have torn it apart." And Reed responds, "Exactly. That means Gladiator must be using something more than strength. And if I've guessed correctly about just what that something extra is, this should be enough to defeat him." So another artifact created by Reed that will save the day. Back at the fight, the Thing arrives just in time to save Captain America from Colossus. And he says, "Let's finish this up fast. After all, I don't really want to hurt anybody." But his words are belied by the destruction caused by the force of his throwing Colossus through the wall of this building. So pretty cool art-wise from Byrne. And then we have a fight continuing between Storm and Gladiator. Interesting little DeLuca effect here from Byrne as well. And Gladiator says, "You can hurt me with your radiation blasts, but only if you can hit me," he says to Storm. Nightcrawler down here spies the dogfight in the air. "Curses of 1,000 dying moons," he exclaims, which of course sounds absolutely nothing like Kurt Wagner. He continues, "Gladiator's evading our attacks. We need more air power to box him in so he can be annihilated." Spider-Man's still in the trash, and he's thinking there, what's he mumbling about? And what the heck kind of language is that? Nightcrawler's German, but that sure ain't Deutsche, he's sprechen. So Nightcrawler ducks behind this overturned car, and from the other side of the car there emerges Angel. So that's unexpected. Also, I like the way that Byrne has cut out here the length of the car, which gives us a sense of the passage of time as well, and also how he's moving the, so to speak, director's viewfinder around for the shots he's showing us on the page. Finally, Spider-Man's getting up. He says he's confused by what he's just seen. "That settles it," he says. "I'm going to pay Nightcrawler back for some bruises, then I'm going to get some answers." So he hops over the other side of the car, but there's nobody there. He's gone. But I was watching the whole time, he says. He couldn't have teleported without me seeing his fire and brimstone effect. But meanwhile, Angel here teams up with Storm and asks her for the Rady Blaster. So this is all not what we'd expect from the X-Men. In the midst of battle, almost too quickly to be followed, a tiny object changes hands. And what happens next? Turn the page. We got a full page image here of Gladiator being fried by Storm and Angel. And it's interesting there, the kind of upshot on his agonized face doesn't look like Byrne. Also the kind of strange tangent here with his cape and the foreshortened leg thrust back, his right leg thrust back. It looks odd. It doesn't read as well as it might have done. But anyway, let's continue with the story. So now Angel here is faced by Human Torch, and the Human Torch is confused. You're going after the bad guy now? Whose side are you guys on? And Angel here says, Cretin, I've been prepared to deal with you. Your fire cannot harm me. Even your vaunted Nova Blast would have no effect upon my specially treated cells. Thus at last begins the project with which we were charged by our Empress, the destruction of the Fantastic Four. So the Human Torch is confused. The Angel's always been tough, but never like this, he thinks to himself. Notice too, we've got no backgrounds here, so these pages are rather easier for Byrne to draw. And you can see also on this page too, once he's given us the top of the Baxter building and the shot of the old Fantastic car flying across the high-rise canyons of Midtown Manhattan, that he cuts out the backgrounds there. So that's all speeding up his work when he's trying to put together 37 pages on a monthly schedule, plus cover, plus the pinup. And here we're getting conversation about Reed and his theory. We were victims of our own perception, Sue. Every manifestation of Gladiator's power proved he was doing something other than what he appeared to be doing. Unfortunately, caught up in battle, we reacted against what we thought his powers to be. Now, by using my modified thought projector, but then he's interrupted because he sees the fight below. And he sees just the man necessary to make my plan work. So I wonder who he spotted. But not far away is the Thing versus Colossus. This is pretty cool here. The Thing punching and destroying those chunks of the road that Colossus is throwing at him. But then he's hit from behind by an optic blast. Cyclops, he thinks to himself, snuck up on me with that blasted beam of his. But wait a minute, that burned my back. I've been on the receiving end of his zaps before, and I know his beam ain't hot. So these aren't the X-Men. Who could they be? You know, at this point, let's just be plain. Unless you're an incredibly dim-witted reader, or unless you're like 5 years old, you've guessed by now, and long before now, that these strange versions of the X-Men have to be Skrulls, right? Okay. So this is a pretty cool image here of the Thing shouldering up a big chunk of the street to protect himself and have cover from Cyclops' blasts. This is a nice drawing of the Human Torch here, throwing fireballs at Angel, but Angel dodges them. I, and I alone, was primed for 2 roles, he says, each equally suited to destroy you or your accursed sister. Now die, he says, as he throws this chunk of metal at the Thing. Or sorry, not at the Thing, but at the Torch. Let's turn the page. So Torch dodges it, and then it goes right into the chest of Cyclops. And of course, the big reveal that we knew it was coming, that Cyclops all along was a Skrull. So this is a nice little sequence here as he falls. Maybe it should have been on a page turn, but like I said, everybody's guessed that the X-Men are Skrulls at this point. And then we go back to Skrull Storm, and she seems to have gotten the better of Gladiator, and she says to him, your final moment is at hand, Gladiator. Bid your farewell to the cosmos. And he's thinking to himself, the witch speaks true. This accursed radiation burns to the very core of my being. I'm a dead man unless. And then he rips up some of the street in order to protect himself, but he's grabbed by these elastic hands. And of course it is Mr. Fantastic. Let's get past the letters page there. Who pulls him to the ground. "Scum of the spaceways," exclaims Gladiator. "You dare too much. I smashed you once. This time I'll kill you." But Reed says to him, "I don't think so, Gladiator. You've made too many mistakes already. You're also wrong in your assumption. My 3 partners and I are not Skrulls, and you're wrong to think your power can harm us now." So Gladiator starts punching, but the attack is almost invisibly fast and almost immeasurably powerful. But you see, Gladiator, I've deduced the secret of your great power and I've cancelled it. You can do nothing against me. So Gladiator starts punching there. Interesting DeLuca effect. Also kind of miscolored, or it looks like it's flesh colored instead of light red, which I think is what Glynis Oliver is going for. It just doesn't read as well as it might. So he's punching, doesn't land a punch on Reed, breaks a steel girder over Reed's head. That doesn't work. Blasts him with beams hotter than a star, but the Earthman remains unmoved. And then you can see the expression on Gladiator's face. He can't believe it. He hesitates and is lost. So he's hit with a force field blast, an invisible force field blast, right on the chin. And he's down and out. So how is this even possible? Here's Reed. So who is this? It worked, he exclaims. Our subterfuge fooled him just enough to make him doubt his own power for a moment. And Sue adds, and in that instant I was able to knock him out with an invisible force field. I think we got that. We didn't need to hear that again. Congratulations, Reed. You read this fella exactly. So who's this? It's Captain America all along. And it looks like he was redirecting the blows of Gladiator back with the shield, and also stopping the steel girder with the shield. And that's how all of that was done. So Reed here says, although Gladiator clearly possesses superhuman physical traits, it was apparent that much of his power is actually psionic in nature. Mental powers such as pyrokinesis, telekinesis, and levitation. Knowing that, all we needed was a scenario which would cause him to doubt his own abilities so we could strike through them. And this is what I was saying about, Byrne is treating Gladiator as a kind of Superman analog in the Marvel universe. But these are some of his pet theories about how Superman's powers would work in the quote-unquote real world. That Superman, DC Comics Superman, is possessed of pyrokinesis for his eye beams, telekinesis for the fact that he can lift up these huge objects that should otherwise crumble, and levitation, how he flies. So what happens here now is that Reed is determined to deal with the so-called X-Men. So the Thing here is tackling Colossus, another one of these 3-panel pages. So we've got him, he throws him up in the air, gets ready to punch him. When he comes down, crack. So he punches him head over heels, or heels over head. He's enjoying himself as well. He doesn't have to hold back because he knows that Colossus isn't Colossus, it's a Skrull. Meanwhile, how's the Human Torch going to fare against both the Angel and Storm Skrull? He thinks, normal Skrulls can shape change, but that's all. Any powers they seem to have are faked. So let's see how these two fare if I push my speed up to nearly supersonic. Good, they're staying right with me. I like the speed effect here that Byrne has come up with in this particular panel. So then he zips straight up the front of the building, thinking I'm more maneuverable than any flight pack or gizmo, so I can make a 90-degree turn. But my nasty-minded friends, they run smack into the side of the building. And then when they're out cold, they transform into their Skrull identities. And there they are, it's all wrapped up. This is a nice panel here as well, with Reed and Sue walking towards the others. And I like the pose on Spider-Man there, sitting on the side, or the bonnet of the wrecked car. And Captain America says, we were lucky, Reed. If the Skrulls had launched a full-scale assault... don't be such a gloomy Gus, says Thing. We whooped them, and now it's finished. Spider-Man says, I don't know if I'm so sure about that thing. What about him? So what about Gladiator? Gladiator's up again. Gladiator has learned his lesson. He says, you've nothing further to fear from me, men of Earth. I've committed a grievous error. I see that now. I was clearly dazed and confused from my first encounter with these Skrull scum. And that was in the last issue when the ship on the edge of the solar system out around Pluto exploded. And it's unclear what happened after that. And it's strange that Byrne doesn't give us an explanation as regards whether there was 4 Skrulls on that ship that made it on a shuttle to Earth, or were they already on Earth and imitating the X-Men, or what was going on. We don't get an explanation of that. Anyway, I like this top-down shot of Captain America here, as he says, while standing over the pile of Skrulls. That explains why my shield was so inefficient against them. Colossus must have been using some kind of energy field, a force blast that I mistook to be his strength. And the Thing concurs, that sounds right. But what the heck do we do with him now? So, Gladiator has the means of containing them. And again, this is like a Superman reference here. Leave that to me, Ben Grimm. He says, as an officer in Her Majesty Lilandra's Imperial Guard, I'm equipped to deal with insurgents. So whatever this is that emerges from something he takes out of his belt, it's like a balloon, and he puts them in it. And so obviously there's air for them. And what's he going to do now? He's going to fly all the light years, millions of light years, to the Shi'ar galaxy with the prisoners. So off he goes. They're going to be, Reed expresses the hope that if they meet again, they'll be friends. And the Thing, final joke, hey, who's going to pay to fix all of this? So look at all the carnage and property damage from the fight of the previous issue and this one. So well done. And here's the creator credits. So they're at the end of the story. John Byrne, storyteller. Christy Shield, colorist. So it wasn't Glynis Oliver coloring this. Joe Rosen on letters. And then you see here Tom DeFalco, script editor, and Jim Sally Krupp, plot editor. Now that's all in relation to ensuring, as I said a little earlier in the video review, that all details were correct about guest starring Marvel Comics characters, as well as the fact that this issue sits in relation to the ongoing continuity of, in particular, Captain America's comic, but also Spider-Man's as well. Make sure everybody is on character and that there's no discrepancies in the continuity. So you don't really have that attention to continuity today in comics, but back in the 70s and 80s and all the way back to the 60s, it was tremendously important. So here we go. We've got that pinup that I said would come at the end of the story. So it's pretty cool there. Always like the way that Byrne does these kind of funny little family moments. And we've got different handwriting styles for the different characters as well, and their little messages. And Reed working on some gizmo, and Franklin playing with those toy soldiers, it looks like. Or I don't know if they're soldiers or not, but whatever they are. Yeah, it's fun. And then there's an advertisement for a graphic novel by Chris Claremont and Bob McLeod. And so this is Claremont expanding the X-Comic universe with the first spin-off title, The New Mutants. And let's just go back here to the letters page so you can see that there. And there's nothing terribly interesting in that. But what about next issue? Come with us on the beginning of a daring new departure for Earth's most amazing quartet. Reed, Sue, Ben and Johnny begin a self-contained mini-series as they plunge into the negative zone. So I do have a criticism about this issue, which is, it's the 250th special issue. It's extra size, twice as many pages, twice as many thrills. But really, the story itself is a bit of a damp squib. It's a bit of it was all a dream, because these aren't the real X-Men. And it would have been much more preferable if we had Byrne come up with a story that involved the actual X-Men, so that his return to drawing the characters was real and had more heft to it. A kind of a Skrull story. While the Skrulls made their first appearance in the Fantastic Four, in the title I mean, it's just a bit of a it was all a dream kind of climax to what was set up really well in the previous issue with Gladiator and all of that, his arrival on Earth. I thought that was really well done, and I just feel that the payoff in this issue, story-wise, I mean, in respect of the story, there's just nothing that is there's no permanent change going to emerge from this particular story. It's superficial in a way. I think the best thing to say about it is it gives Byrne an opportunity to produce some pretty cool art and some pretty cool fight scenes. So visually, it's great to see him drawing these X-Men characters, Spider-Man, Captain America, fighting on the street of Manhattan. That's all cool. But as I said, and I've said it a couple of times now, the reveal, the Skrulls, it just doesn't add up to very much. Not for me, but you might have a different opinion. What's coming up next, the trip into the negative zone, much more interesting in my opinion. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Fantastic Four number 250. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.